Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories podcast. I am one of your hosts for today, John DeLynn. It's December 5th, 2024, and today we are here to talk about a recent BYU. We're here to talk sports, and who else should we have to talk sports than Samantha Shelley? Welcome, Samantha Shelley.
Thank you, John.
She's our resident sports expert.
I am.
It's so good to have you.
Yeah, when you were planning this episode, presumably 35 minutes ago when you asked me to be here, was I your first choice, or how far down on the list were we?
Gerardo, what's the answer to that?
You were first.
Before you were like, she'll yell about swearing a little bit on camera. People were like that.
No, you were actually our first choice.
Wow.
I said, wait, what about? And Gerardo
Mormon
said
Stories has gone to the dogs.
We are here today to talk about a recent news story regarding BYU football and the BYU football team. The thumbnail says leaked BYU football profanity tirade. We're going to get into what the story's about. Basically, a BYU football player was recorded swearing during a halftime of the BYU Arizona State football game. And we're not trying to stir up controversy. We're not trying to condemn this player for swearing. We're not anti-swearing necessarily. We're not moral purists by any stretch. I
thought you'd gone this far without swearing. Wasn't that your whole thing? You've never said a swear word?
Oh, no, I've said the F-bomb on Mormon Stories.
Okay, sorry.
Should I say it now? No, I better not.
If you feel called to at any point.
Not yet, but I may.
But your comments might not like it.
Yeah. No, but yeah, we're not here to be moral purists. We're not here to attack people, just to be clear. And we just got a comment like, this is not a newsworthy story. Why are you even covering it? But I think that viewer and listener doesn't understand why we're covering it. And Gerardo, this is something you felt passionately about, and kind of you produced this episode. Is that right?
Yeah.
And let me just be clear. Is it because you're against swearing?
Yeah.
No.
He always has been. He's always said that.
Is it because you want to embarrass this football player and shame him? And
no,
make him look bad?
no, not at all.
Okay.
And
is it because you think that BYU football players don't swear and never?
Are you jealous of athletes?
No, neither.
Okay. All right. So, and you can hold the suspense, but what do you want to say?
Well, I'll say how this came about. So it was like 12 a.m. in the morning, and John sent me a link.
Are you saying I work at 12 at midnight?
Yeah. I mean, that's around the time you start working.
Drag him.
And then it was a link to an X post, which had a recording of a TikTok video that was actually deleted by that point. And the video was this recording outside of the locker rooms, but you could still hear, the swearing and screaming from this football player, with a lot of profanity and during the halftime part of the football game in Arizona. And when I saw it, I was like, I mean, that I can, what's the problem with that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they're gonna feel bad about it, and that it was made public, and I'm sure they're gonna sweep it under the rug. And then I started reading the comments, and then all these members that had like temple pictures with on their Twitter accounts, and our Cougar fans, they're like saying like, oh, who cares about profanity? This is football. It's in the it was on the like locker room talk. Who cares? And then I started thinking, well, to what point, does that, do you stop that? Because, thinking about all the people that I know who have been turned into the Honor Code, or have, been caught by the Honor Code in things that they were thinking they were doing in private, but then they were kicked out of school or reprimanded because of any kind of other type of behavior against the Honor Code. Which any of those members who are justifying it for the football player would be, against any other person, an LGBT person holding hands on campus with someone of their same sex. I don't know. I just saw it very hypocritical, and then I kind of just went through the rabbit hole, and that we're gonna go into here.
And I woke up at like 3 or 4 to go to the bathroom, and Gerardo texts me, and he's like, "I can't go to bed. I'm gonna be up all night," because this really got you fired up, because you went to BYU Idaho.
Yeah,
you were impacted by the Honor Code.
Yeah,
and you've always felt passionately about, I guess, hypocrisy.
Well, I was a hypocrite.
Yeah, you were a hypocrite. Yeah.
Yeah, because I got married.
Because you married Zach as a BYU
my
student.
husband while at BYU.
Yeah.
But we had to keep it secret, you
Yeah.
know, and we were terrified if we were that we were found out. We were actually turned in twice to our bishop. So I mean, luckily we were able to deny ourselves out of it. But anyway, so it was just kind of really interesting, the privilege, and then how it became so public to the point where a news network owned by the church is defending the football player and the behavior against the honor code. You know, seeing it the other ways, like this would never pass for other type of students.
Yeah. So today's episode is kind of about hypocrisy. It's about double standard. It's exploring hypocrisy within the Mormon church, double standards within the Mormon church, and kind of like selective caring about
Patriarchy.
Patriarchy? Ooh, Samantha, you got to bring in down the patriarchy.
Yeah,
hammer,
I mean, why
huh?
else have you booed me? What am I here for?
Patriarchy, apparently. We'll find out why. And yeah, just, I guess, the shifting culture in Mormonism. Like BYUs now have Coke, like caffeinated Coca-Cola. Like the church is clearly becoming less strict about certain things. And so it's just a moment to explore. We're not here to condemn anyone. We're not here to punish BYU or make their football team look horrible. We just think it'd be fun to talk about. So we're going to talk about it. All right. So thank you for everyone who's joining us on the live stream. We've already got a couple super chats. We're grateful for anyone who, donates to Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation, because we couldn't do it without your support. Sam, you're with Zelf on the Shelf. I'm sure you always appreciate support as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So check out Samantha as well. But thanks to everyone who makes this show possible. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Gerardo, here is the homepage of the Washington Times, and it says Big 12. For those of you, do you know what the Big 12 is, Samantha? I'm sure you do.
Kind of like the 12 biggest, baddest boys teams in sports.
The Big 12 apostles.
In American football.
The Big 12 is the athletic conference that BYU is now a part of. The University of Utah just joined it. It's kind of a big deal. BYU is predicted to be last or amongst the last in the Big 12 this year. I don't know if you know this, but for a long, long time, BYU is unaffiliated with any athletic conference because they kind of like got mad that University of Utah went to the Pac-12, which was a more prestigious conference, but BYU was left out. So they decided they would kind of be like Notre Dame and be independent of any athletic conference. And they did that, and it was not good for their program. So just recently, BYU and then University of Utah, once the Pac-12 blew up, joined the Big 12. And so BYU was picked to kind of be last, and the University of Utah was picked to be first in the Big 12 this year. And the University of Utah has sucked. And BYU was ranked first and undefeated for like the first 7 or 8 games. And so this Arizona State game that BYU was playing was actually a really important game because it was going to probably determine whether or not BYU would go to the college football playoff. So it was a really big game. I was on the edge of my seat to see how they do. They had lost one game by that point, but I think they ended up losing the game, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a bummer. But anyway, so the Big 12 is the conference that BYU is a part of right now. And apparently they're investigating not the swearing, but they're investigating the leaked video of the BYU football players' explicit halftime speech.
As they should.
Yeah. Why?
Well, I mean, so they've just recorded someone without their consent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's fucked up.
Do we know if Arizona's did you just swear on a swearing podcast episode?
Sorry. I'm trying to help you draw in people from all sides of the spectrum.
It's diversity. It's language diversity. I like it. No, I'm kidding. You can swear. Because I'm the patriarch and I can give permission.
It's just so nice to get that kind of permission. Yeah.
Where were we? I'm lost. Where were we?
Oh, yeah.
So the Washington Times covers a story, and that's kind of where my journey started.
Okay. Gerardo's journey.
With oh wow, like this is being covered by the media, and that article had several quotes from interesting BYU personalities defending the football player. But let's not start there. I think we should start with some interesting general authority quotes.
We'll follow
Yes.
the prophet, right, Gerardo?
Yeah.
So of course the very first slide Gerardo comes up with is one of Russell M. Nelson. Right?
Yeah, at BYU. All of this that we're going to show are speeches given by prophets, seers, and revelators at BYU.
And for our Never Mormon listeners, who's this homeboy that they're seeing right now on the screen? Who's this homeboy?
He's the current president of the church, prophet, seer, and revelator.
Yeah, so he's God's special mouthpiece on the earth for the world, not just for our church, but for the world.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Correct.
So we want to hear what he has to say about swearing?
Let's hear it.
All right, here's Rusty.
Is it about the word Mormon?
That's also a swear word.
Language.
Mm-hmm.
Language has the power to inspire and edify. You have the potential to speak with the tongue of angels. Start by speaking kindly of others. Don't be vulgar or profane. And for exciting new opportunities in life, study the language of people in lands other than your own.
Yes, Sammy, don't be vulgar and profane.
I know. He's got some good, very four agreements of him back then.
All right, Gerardo, what's your point with that clip?
Yeah, I mean, just to show that this is something that prophets care about and teach, and not just to the general membership of the church, but they're teaching it directly at BYU schools.
Yeah, and a general conference. Like this is swearing's a big deal. I grew up not swearing.
Yeah,
and I actually swear now as a way to kind of deprogram my conditioning. And Margie does too. Do you know Margie sometimes says the F-bomb? Can you imagine?
I would love to hear that and have it injected directly into my veins when I'm just having a moment.
It's so cute to see Margie swear.
Mm-hmm.
It's cute. Anyway. All right, let's see. Actually, my children who have struggled with recovering from Mormon conditioning told us that it would be healing for them to hear us swear in all seriousness, because it would help them decondition the intensity of our upbringing, which was pretty intense, honestly.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I love that they picked up on that.
So we swear for our children, basically.
That's good parenting.
All right. This looks like Spence W. Kimball, right, Gerardo?
No, this is going to be Elder Oaks, I believe.
Oh, okay. Kimball's just in the
thumbnail.
Okay. All right. Let's hear Oaks. He's also in the first presidency of the church, right? Okay.
First counselor of the first presidency.
Number 2 top Mormon leader in the world, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see what Oaks has to say.
Because integrity, which is the willingness and ability to live by our beliefs and commitments, is one of the foundation stones of good character. And without good character, one cannot hope to enjoy the presence of God here or in the eternities. In this institution, students and faculty commit themselves explicitly to abide by a code of conduct, which includes both living by the moral precepts of the gospel and conforming to a dress and grooming code. Some purport to accept the moral standards as important and denigrate the other as trivial and as intruding on their freedom of choice. But they fundamentally misperceive the question. The question is not whether the dress and grooming code is wise, but whether they should consider themselves bound by a promise.
Yeah. So this was an interesting quote, and props to Julia for finding these, but this one's talking about the idea of integrity, which I think Mormonism would teach, that you should be the same person and leave the commandments of the church, whether you're in public or in private, and it doesn't matter where you are, you should be the same. And he's talking about the honor code specifically, and why BYU has the honor code.
Okay.
This was important because I saw a lot of the comments defending the behavior, or I should call it the violation of the honor code, as well. This was in a private setting, so it doesn't really matter.
He also seems to be associating the honor code with like being in the Lord's presence in the hereafter, right? I mean, that's pretty high stakes, right? Right. I mean, I guess saying how you dress and how you speak will help determine whether you go to Mormon heaven, right? Celestial kingdom. Did I take that too far?
I think that's what he's saying.
Okay. Samantha?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now, if that weren't enough, you've got Jeffrey, Elder Holland.
Yeah.
He's the acting president of the Quorum of the 12. So he's like the number 4 leader in the church. What do you want to say about this?
Well, this is I think a lot of our listeners would know where this.
Wait, is this the musket speech?
Yeah.
Okay, this is the musket speech. All right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Oh, this is just when he pissed off the whole world, Mormon world and ex-Mormon world, by basically telling BYU professors and faculty that they need to grab their muskets and defend the church, dog whistling that we need more opposition to LGBTQ support.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And not only did he not backtrack what he said because of the uproar, but now BYU has made it a mandatory curriculum for all BYU students to study this talk in a mandatory class for all students.
Yeah. And he got destroyed. He got disinvited from, I think, from like a university commencement speech, basically. I mean, he said they ended up saying he was sick, and he was sick, but really there was a student uproar saying, we don't want this guy speaking at
SUU.
SUU. Thank you. Because he's a bigot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hasn't he in recent, I don't know, months yet, didn't he say softly that he regretted it a bit? Or
something.
Just that, he felt some kind of emotion, allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, he was bitch slapped. I hate to use that term, but he was beat down. So anyway, let's hear what he has to say.
Let's hear it.
All right.
I said then, and I say now, that if we're an extension of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and take a significant amount of sacred tithes and other human precious resources, all of which might well be expended in other worthy causes, surely our integrity demands that our lives be absolutely consistent with and characteristic of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. At a university, there will always be a healthy debate regarding a whole syllabus full of issues. But until we all come to the unity of the faith and have grown to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, our next best achievement will be to stay in harmony with the Lord's anointed, those whom he has designated to declare church doctrine and to guide Brigham Young University as its trustees.
Lots of words. What was he saying?
Listen to me.
Yeah. And this idea that, I mean, I went to BYU Idaho, Sam went to BYU Idaho, but you're constantly reminded that your education is being paid by tithing dollars, and that that's one of the reasons why the standards are higher, and you're held to a higher standard than people in other universities. And that's kind of what he's saying. He's even saying BYU is an extension of the church.
Yeah. Okay. And you've got another clip here.
Yeah,
so
just one more from him.
Okay, let's roll that.
In his discourse, President Kimball used the word unique 8 times and special 8 more times. It seems clear to me in my 73 years of loving it that BYU will become an educational Mount Everest only to the degree it embraces its uniqueness, its singularity. We could mimic every other university in this world until we get a bloody nose in the effort. And that world would still say, BYU who? No, we must have the will to be different, to stand alone if necessary, being a university second to none in its role primarily as an undergraduate teaching institution that is unequivocally true to the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so he's really amping up the stakes there. What do you think, Sammy?
I mean, yeah, that's when you're at a church school, it's very much equating every single little arbitrary rule at that church school with your salvation. They make sure you know that there's no separation between them.
Yeah. Okay.
And just a reminder that this is the same talk where he said, if we are unable to keep, if we're forced to accept LGBT or same-sex romantic behavior in the school, let's not even talk about sexual behavior, just romantic behavior. We would rather close the university or like something around those lines, kind of like we'd rather lose all of our federal funding. And if we were forced not to follow the standards of the church.
I'm reminded by our series with Dr. Matt Harris in Second Class Saints. Sammy, I don't know if you heard about this book, Second Class Saints, and Dr. Matt Harris wrote a book called Second Class Saints, Black Mormons and the Struggle for Racial Equality. And in the book, he talks about, like, in 1969, the IRS was investigating BYU for being racist and not allowing. There's like 2 black students in all of BYU and no black athletes, as late as 69, 70. And so they were going to punish the church, the IRS was. And I don't know, somehow the report got brought to like Harold B. Lee or whatever. And he literally said, I'd rather shut the university down than allow a black athlete at BYU.
That's the spirit, just hold to the end.
So, I mean, that shows what type of similar resolve existed decades ago.
Yeah.
And then how, of course, fungible or flexible that is depending on the changing times, right?
Yeah, because they're also like, if polygamy ever goes away, God's going to remove the priesthood. No one's going to be able to have it. And then they're like, actually, no.
It's okay. Yeah. So times change, but now it's not black people. It's gay people, basically.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that's the line in the sand that the brethren have drawn. So,
yeah.
Okay. So you've got a slide on the Sunday play policy, Gerardo.
Yeah. So this was interesting because I was looking at the BYU. This is the BYU Cougars website. So this is about the BYU football team.
Okay.
And they have this kind of like FAQs question and questionnaire where they're responding to some questions. One of them is, what is the Sunday play policy or BYU rule? And basically what it's saying, I mean, you can put it on the screen. I don't think it's necessary to read the whole thing. But basically what it's saying is that the NCAA has a written policy against competition on a particular day for religious reasons. So it allows schools like BYU to be exempt from having to play on Sundays. So this is kind of like how far they're willing to take, their religious liberty kind of talk into, making organizations like the NCAA make concessions for them because of their religious beliefs that are super important, because we're different, we are special, and we are different, like Jeffrey L. Hahn said, we ought to be unique.
Yeah. I'm trying to. So is this an effect? Do BYU athletes not play on Sunday? That's
what, because I on the online I was seeing comments that people said that they do, but that's what I saw on the website today.
Yeah,
so.
I'm unsure. If y'all in the comments want to let us know, Julia, maybe you can star any comments that give us some updated information on whether that rule is still in effect.
Yeah.
But let's jump to the BYU Honor Code.
Yeah, and this is not from the Honor Code website, but this is from the football team website, BYU Cougars.
Okay.
And it has a couple paragraphs about the Honor Code. Do you want to read them?
Yeah, it says, I'll just read the second paragraph. Initiated by students in 1949 by students. So the students were demanded. The students
they were begging
demanded
us, ban flip-flops, please.
No leggings in the testing center. They're making me uncomfortable. We need an Honor Code BYU. Okay. Initiated by students in 1949. The Honor Code is a matter of personal commitment to values such as honesty, living a chaste and virtuous life, obeying the law, abstaining from alcohol and tobacco, using clean language, and adhering to other values encompassed in the doctrines of the church. So is profanity literally in the Honor Code?
Yeah. So it's more explicit in the actual Honor Code.
Okay.
But
are we going to have a screen?
Yeah, we're going to have a screen.
Okay. And by the way, can I just I told you my story earlier, Gerardo. Can I tell you my story?
Yeah.
So a couple things. So I'm just going to say, like, okay, yes, highfalutin language about the honor code, and BYU is different and the church is morally superior. Like, okay, we all kind of know that. We've now reviewed it for Never Mormons. The reality has always been different. So when I was at BYU from 87 to 93, I had a couple interesting interactions with athletes. One was I was a tutor for American Heritage, which was a required history and political science class for BYU students. I was an American Heritage tutor to BYU athletes. And it was a known reality that like BYU athletes, male athletes, would live with their girlfriends. They would be sexually active with their girlfriends, but they would have arrangements where, you know, they could be sexually active, but it wasn't enforced. And part of that was because especially for some of the specialty positions, BYU has to recruit from non-Mormon. They do a lot of recruiting from California, you know, African-Americans from California and Texas, honestly. And those dudes aren't going to come to BYU and abstain from sex. They're just not, or other things. And so the BYU athletic program has always had this double standard. Same with academics, like, you know, helping players pass classes when they don't meet academic standards. So I saw it. I tutored BYU football players that lived with their girlfriends. And, you know, it was eyes were turned, heads were turned, and it wasn't enforced. We also know we've had people on Mormon Stories, women who had sex with BYU athletes who were kicked out of BYU for having sex with the BYU male athlete, and the BYU male athletes were allowed to continue being male athletes as BYU students. Is that where the patriarchy starts to come in, Samantha, or is that just one example?
Yeah, I mean, there's patriarchy in there. And also just that classic thing in high control groups where people that are high up who, you know, add this really high value to the group, the leaders will turn a blind eye to that.
Yeah, because football programs that are successful bring in millions and millions of dollars to the university and a lot of publicity and recognition. Yeah. So if the church is best conceived as a corporation, money and power speaks. The football team is the most enriching and powerful program in all of BYU, including all the academics. So people associated with it are going to get a pass. Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I just thought was a really funny story, Samantha, you might find this interesting. So I went to high school in Katy, Texas, suburb of Houston, and my best friend, Chad McMillan, in high school, 6'6", like 350 pounds, huge guy. He became an offensive lineman at the University of Texas. And ironically, the same year I was a freshman at BYU, Chad played for the University of Texas football team. And in the fall of 1987, University of Texas played BYU. And shocking to the SEC fans of today, BYU beat University of Texas in the fall of 1987, which probably wouldn't happen today. University of Texas is a top 10 program. Anyway, when I was kind of lightly rubbing it in Chad's face, my friend Chad's face, the BYU beat University of Texas, he said something to me that really blew me away. Samantha, do you want to guess what he said?
I have no guess.
He said, "John, BYU is the most foul-mouthed football team that you know, in college football." And I know that sounds ridiculous, and it probably sounds too ridiculous for today's episode, because I have no reason to believe that's actually true, but I'm not making that story up. That's what my friend. Ridiculous. Well, I do. I mean, think about it: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, New York, California. Like, why would BYU football players have the most foul mouths of like all college football? Because
they're coming from the background of repression, and they are kind of this select group within the group that gets to engage in this behavior. And it's kind of for a lot of the Mormon players, it's like they're probably their one outlet for being bad. So it makes sense that they would kind of go wild with that. So kind of like the reason why maybe Utah might lead the nation in per capita porn use is because all the men are told not to look at porn. And because of that repression, they do it more. Are you saying that might be what's going on? Yeah, the forbidden is more appealing, but there's this weird loophole they get to enjoy, which probably makes them feel powerful in a system that is very controlling, you know?
And so I'm not saying that's true about BYU. I suspect it's not true, but I am saying my friend Chad told me that, and he played BYU.
I always
in
trusted
87.
Chad personally, so I think we can kind of run with that.
Trust Chad. I got it. All right. New hashtag. All right. So go ahead, Gerardo.
I did want to say something. There was a comment, I might have lost it, but someone saying, like, to be fair, other universities also asked not to play on Sundays, so BYU doesn't get any special treatment there. I don't think that's totally the point that we were trying to make, but I did want to say, as I was driving over here at the studio, I was thinking about this. BYU has been central in a lot of laws that are have to do with religious exemptions and religious liberty.
Religious freedom.
And it has all started with BYU trying to either be bigoted towards minorities, such as Black people or LGBT people, or even women and gender. So if you go back to when the Title IX was passed, which is supposed to protect women from discrimination, when it originally was passed by Congress in the United States, it did not have any religious exemptions. And then it was Elder Oaks, who was the president at BYU at the time, who basically, if I remember the story correctly, he sent letters to Congress saying kind of like that it was it was ridiculous that there was no religious exemption for this law, and for religions that consider the distinctions between gender as essential doctrinally. So it was because of Elder Oaks' push that I think the following year Congress passed really explicit and broad religious exemptions for Title IX. So BYU has been at the forefront of passing laws that allow them to keep either bigoted or discriminatory practices today. So because of their religious beliefs or this idea of wanting to stay unique. So it's just a little bit hypocritical, to give certain things a pass, but also enlightening to see where the church wants to focus their attention and efforts in, nailing people down.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue to the actual clip. So now, Gerardo, what we have is the clip of Tyler Batty, and we're going to explain.
Is swearing?
Yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know we were going to get to watch it.
It's bleep though.
Yeah. So Gerardo,
Thank God.
Zach told Gerardo that we should bleep out the swear words. So the swear words are bleeped out. We do have the uncensored version. We can play that for you if you want, Samantha. But I think it's funnier to hear it bleeped, frankly.
They can read it if you watch the video. It's on the captions.
But we're not calling out Tyler Batty. We're not saying he's a bad person. We're not trying to shame or embarrass him.
His last name is Batty?
Yeah, Batty, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I think he's a defensive end, and I think he's one of the captains of the football team. Mm-hmm. So basically, it's halftime. BYU's getting schlocked by, is that a word? By Arizona State University, and so he's screaming at the players, saying, "Pull your acts together."
Oh, because he's the head.
He's a team captain.
Okay.
Yeah. So this isn't a coach. This is a player.
Right.
So we're gonna now hear a edited, bleeped version of Tyler Batty's tirade at halftime of the BYU Arizona State football game. So let's roll the clip.
You can show how much you care about how you fight. I don't see a bunch of motherfuckers, including myself, now you throwing that. We did too much. We worked too hard. We were put our lives on the line for this game. So what the are we doing out there, man? Look at the guys around you. We sacrifice for each other. We plead for each other. That's right now. Hey, us. It ain't us, man. That ain't us. They have a football. Not us, man. We care way more than that. I care you. Because I saw our teacher work. I saw what we went through. I'm saying how much you guys care about this. Hey. So why are we doing it right now, man? Look, we got 30 minutes. Man, for me, that could be pretty much the last 30 minutes of my career here. That's how much it means. That's how you guys want to go to a championship. 30 minutes of our best football game is going to take. Yes, sir. It's going to take you looking at the dude and look at the dude next to you, look at him in the eyes, and tell him, hey, I'm gonna give you everything I've got. I'm gonna give you everything I've got for the next 30 minutes. I ain't gonna complain. I'm gonna play my heart out, and I don't care if they gotta tear me off the field at the end of this game. That's what it's gonna
All right, Sammy, that's the first time you've heard that?
He seemed really upset. He seemed really upset. Not a Ted Lasso in sight to rein him in, just unchecked. I mean, he's feeling the weight of losing the game.
Yeah.
And I can imagine myself being able to put myself in his shoes and that being hard.
Yeah. And I guess he must be a senior, so this might be the last game of his career, so he feels passionately about it.
He's sort of just yelling generally, right? Not to one person in particular.
To the team.
It sounds like it's to the team. Yeah.
Seemed like that's how I imagine sports being in the dress. I mean that.
Yeah, like that's part of the
That's how it
tradition
is,
is
right?
halftime, rally the troops.
Yeah.
And get them excited to play. Totally normal. Probably happens in every halftime football game.
But it's like use that, take it onto the pitch.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: like, what do we think about the person who recorded it? Like, was that a lame thing to do for somebody to record it?
100%. Yeah.
What if it's legal? What if Arizona's a two-party state? I guess that would violate the two-party rule, because at least one of he wasn't a party. I'm assuming it wasn't someone who was in that conversation, so it would be illegal, even if it was a two-party state, because you're recording someone without their consent, and it's not a conversation you're a part of. That's what two-party means.
Well, as it's kind of but it's to a group.
It's private.
Just because even if it is legal, that doesn't make it moral.
Okay.
I think that's someone who's clearly in like a private moment, is very triggered, and like I assume sports, like he seems very dysregulated. You have to really put your whole heart into sports. I always am hearing, and he's not doing well. I just think to record someone in an intimate moment like that without their consent is shitty. You shouldn't do that.
Okay.
And look what. Yeah.
All right.
Like the swearing and the double standard, that's kind of a separate issue, but non-consensually recording someone in a private moment, whether or not I sort of like agree with the vibe.
Yeah.
Just
Gerardo.
Yeah, I think it's questionable.
Okay.
It's not really...
I think I would feel a lot stronger that the way Sammy you're describing it if this guy was like in the locker room or had like intentionally, but if you're on the hallway and you can hear the screams.
Oh, he's in the hallway.
Yeah, he's on the hallway.
Oh,
so you can hear the screams of like
privacy.
Yeah.
So here's a question that's probably obvious.
So you could see people walking by where the person was.
So this may be obvious to y'all, but I think it's worth asking. Why would anyone? I guess we could assume it was an Arizona State fan
or employee
that did this and not a BYU fan. I don't know that we know that, but let's just assume it's an Arizona State fan or employee, because they're in a restricted area, so it's likely an employee. Why would they think, let me record a BYU screaming profane tirade and then put it on the internet? What would be the possible motivations for that?
I mean, obviously it's more salacious to hear a BYU player swearing and ranting like that, but I do feel like in our digital media landscape, it's kind of people's heads are pretty warped in terms of like they see someone having an extreme reaction in public, an intense emotional reaction, and it's kind of normal to film it because it's gonna get views, be captivating to people on social media, which is something I think about a lot. I just don't really like that we as a society lately don't have a lot of like boundaries with each other in terms of like filming people in public. Yeah, it might technically be legal, but it's like, is that moral? Is it ethical?
But what's the Mormon angle? Because I can't imagine that a BYU employee would stand outside of an Arizona State locker room and record a player swearing and then put it on the internet. So why would a presumably Arizona State employee want to do that to BYU?
So that's what I'm saying, is it may not be motivated by the fact that it's BYU. To us, I mean, that's kind of the interesting angle, is the hypocrisy, right? Because Mormons are known for not swearing, but it's also possible that they were just like, oh, look at this person wilding out.
I think it was religiously motivated. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, not that the person that recorded was religious, but trying to, like, the intention was to show these guys are supposed to be Mormons and look at what they're doing. I think that was the intention behind it, just
Yeah.
based on the caption that was put on TikTok.
So he posted it on TikTok. the person who
I
recorded it.
believe the person that recorded it.
Yeah. I'll say I think it's lame. I don't care if there's a Jewish person eating a hot dog, I wouldn't want to
Right,
film
yeah,
that and put it on the
exactly.
internet. I
Exactly.
think that'd be
We
lame.
all deserve to
But-
be hypocrites. That's
But there's
part
a
of the
lot
human
of things.
condition.
There's a lot of things around it. If you know that these are the guys that, you know, are holding themselves out for being religious and not playing on Sundays
Mhm.
and thinking that they're better than everybody else because they follow the Lord's, you know, Sabbath, but then behind the scenes they're doing this, you know.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Yeah.
It's a natural consequence.
It's not the same as like
BYU.
you're saying, John. The example you're saying about a Jewish person eating a
Oh,
hot dog.
because Jewish people wouldn't be lording their diet
right,
restrictions over everyone else,
Right.
As
Yeah.
if they're better than people.
right.
You're
and
saying,
yeah, and the football team is supposed to represent, you know, is the pinnacle of the representation of the church in sports.
Okay, so Jewish leaders wouldn't say that dude who ate the hot dog represents
Yeah,
the best ideals of our church.
Right.
Just simply to play devil's advocate, Mormons aren't trying to make it so that other people can't swear necessarily, though. It's a bit of a in-between one for me.
I guess it's just when you try and hold a moral high ground,
Yeah,
gonna
this is a
invite-
natural
you're gonna invite
consequence of
scrutiny.
being so pious. Like, of
Yeah.
course someone's going to record you if you're then being that hypocritical. Yeah.
Mhm.
And do you think the church in 2024 comes off as arrogant and morally pious?
Yeah.
You think so?
I mean, this speech by Elder Holland was given just a couple
Years
years ago, and I'm telling you, just a year ago, it was put as as mandatory curriculum for all students.
No. I know that's internal though. I'm
Oh.
saying to the world, because I'm assuming this ASU employee is not Mormon.
I see.
Would they feel like those prick Mormons? They always think they're better than everybody.
Well,
You know what I mean? Or do Mormons in 2024 come off as sort of prudish, morally superior people? Or do they come off as chill, open, relaxed, non-judgmental people?
that one. I mean, the Mormon Church as an organization is like affecting laws. Like, they really are putting their purity complexes onto, you know, you can't watch Pornhub in Utah now.
Right.
And you know, the Mormon Church has been part of that effort. Like, it certainly is like very, I mean, it's arrogant and it's pious and self-righteous to think that you as a American religious organization have the right to go and, you know, try and fuck with whether gay marriage gets legalized in Mexico and stuff. Like, that's
Mhm.
the audacity of them, you know?
Mm.
Okay, so as soon as the church starts trying to tell other people what they can and can't do by
Which they
influencing
do.
the law,
Yeah.
like in Prop 8 in California,
Mhm.
or if they write an amicus brief opposing transgender rights or whatever.
Which they are.
Which, yeah.
Just yesterday there was
What,
a
did the church write an amicus brief in the Supreme Court?
I didn't check, but I can guarantee that they have.
Okay,
They did.
yeah. So if the church is sort of trying to inject its moral standards into the law, then just immediately that invites scrutiny, you're saying.
Yeah. While being
Okay.
tax-free.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We do have a comment here that I think is worth reading. Cassafras says, I'm sorry, I'm straining everyone, but I have to look sideways. It was an ASU security guard who recorded it. So apparently we know who recorded it.
Hmm.
According to Cassafras, Tyler is a senior, also married my cousin.
Oh,
So Tyler married Cassafras's cousin and is a teddy bear. So Tyler's a teddy bear. I believe that.
That's
Yeah,
what
I
sports
believe
does
it.
to
I
a
believe
man.
that. Yeah. No, I believe that. No shade at athletes or football players. He was just hyping up his team. I will say, and Samantha, you didn't get to hear the full version. And again, I have feet of clay and glass. Like, we'll mix all the metaphors here. He did say you're all acting like a bunch of pussies. He did say that.
Wonderful.
Is that like, do we care? Is that a big deal that it's degrading to women or whatever? Do you feel strongly about the use of that word versus calling them bitches or saying fuck or
Would you prefer pussies or bitches? As the woman on the panel. I think using pussies in that context, even though it is like a pretty ubiquitous phrase, it is somewhat revealing of, you know, sort of their general state of mind around women in a way that's not surprising. Seems like sports culture probably uses that word a lot generally among men. There's simply no way to motivate a team other than by insulting them, by likening them to women. The Ted Lasso approach hasn't caught on yet in America.
Okay.
But imagine if BYU had a Ted Lasso type coach. That would be so fitting. And then they would actually have a leg to stand on.
I'm dying to know whether like the current BYU coach swears, whether Lavelle Edwards used to swear. I would assume they do.
I bet he swears a bit. Soft swearer.
Yeah. All right. So on to the slides. So Gerardo, the next one is the actual honor code.
Yeah. It has that line. Do you want to read it?
Respect others, including the avoidance of profane and vulgar language. So it's part of the honor code.
Yeah. One of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 points. One of the 8 points is profanity.
So it's honesty, chastity, virtue, alcohol, tobacco, coffee, tea, vaping, marijuana, other substances. Attend church. Don't use vulgar language. Obey and follow campus policies, including the dress and grooming standards. Okay, so this is on the same level as stuff that gets people kicked out of BYU.
Yep.
So I mean, it's actually sandwiched between, like, if you don't dress right, you can't go to the testing center and like take a test.
Right.
You can get kicked out of BYU for violating a dress code, and for the word of wisdom, the health code, and for sexual stuff. So I mean, it's there.
Yep.
It's fair.
You can literally get kicked out for the dress code if you are a man who identifies as you were assigned male at birth and then identify as a woman and want to dress, as a woman, you'll get kicked out just for your dress code.
So if BYU is going to be consistent in its enforcement of these policies, then it would call Tyler Batty into the honor code office. Here's a photo of Tyler Batty, 92. I'm sure he's a super nice guy, so we're not trashing him.
Yep.
But they would call him into the honor code office. Warn him? Say if you're caught swearing again, we're gonna kick you out of the university. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure to that level, but I mean, the church has, and the honor code has a history on enforcing its policies, especially when things become public and caring about its image. So it was really surprising, to have. We'll talk about.
We'll show that. Yeah.
The BYU officials justifying this.
Yeah.
So.
All right, we'll get to that. So here's a photo. You have a photo of Tyler on his mission.
Yeah, he went on a mission.
Looks like Spanish.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's a missionary. Did you have any point other than just that he's
showing that because like you said at the beginning, sometimes BYU recruits a non-member, so just to show he's not just a member, but he was a returned missionary.
Okay.
But was he an AP? That's what we need to know.
So because you want to know if he's marriage material, right?
Right. 6'6", you say?
Well, he is married.
Oh,
so sad.
So this is his Instagram type?
Yeah, that's his wife. And there's a picture on the Instagram with the
that one on the right is weird. So how did you find that photo? So it's basically
the Instagram.
So it shows, I assume the person that's his wife.
Yeah.
It shows her in a, what do you call that top, Samantha? I don't know.
Bralette.
A bralette?
Yeah.
Okay, so she's wearing a bralette. I see her stomach, which is a no-no in Mormonism.
She's
right?
a UVU student, by the way. She's not BYU.
Well, maybe she's not. It's possible she's not a Mormon or she's not active. I guess.
Could be.
But clearly, for those of us who
there was no temple pictures in the Instagram.
Okay.
So
it's more bad girl Mormon though, for sure. Yeah.
Or non-Mormon, right? So we don't know. But it's certainly not BYU or Mormon dress code standards. But the weird one is he's in the backdrop flipping off the camera with his middle finger, which again, no judgment. Other than that's kind of off brand for a Mormon returned missionary.
I would be scared to post a picture like that while going to BYU.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, because if a non-football player posted a photo like that, they could get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But is that right now public on his Instagram?
Yeah.
I bet it won't be by tomorrow.
We'll see.
Aw, stand by it, Tyler.
Yeah, because he's kind of flipping off. He's just he's flipping off.
And then the one on the left, interesting official BYU picture. I mean, I don't know how official, but that's definitely in the BYU studio.
Yeah.
These are the pictures that BYU takes of their athletes, and that's not interesting dress and grooming standards
Yeah.
Mhm.
and his,
that are enforced to other women, but not if you're the wife of the athlete.
And the byline says God, family, and BYU football. That's what the byline says. All right,
The byline in what?
like in his Instagram profile.
Oh, right.
That's like his little.
Yeah.
All right, so what's this next slide, Gerardo?
So now we're getting into the articles, and I decided to put this one here, but this was from the Washington Times.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
I think it's kind of cool. Like, can't we, as progressive Mormons or ex-Mormons, think it's kind of, can I say badass, that like he's defying cheesy parochial Victorian stereotypes, that he is that she is dressed in a way that's comfortable for her, that he is expressing himself in non-traditional purity Mormon ways, and that he's kind of being who he is on Instagram. Can we celebrate that?
Yeah, for sure.
Can we say that's cool?
In some ways, I know what you're saying. And also, there's kind of a little bit of a thing in patriarchal cultures like Mormonism where it's like the rules can be bent if it's in a way that benefits a man and his sort of like potential ego and pleasure. So like having a wife who dresses more, like modern day hot girl is like benefiting him as the husband, and she's married and she belongs to a man. So it's kind of like more okay. I don't know. It's just interesting. It does feel like a lot of the rules that in patriarchal groups like Mormonism that people will be willing to bend are the ones that generally cater to like the male experience.
But couldn't we say that's a courageous thing to do? Like he's trying to change culture and say, hey, Mormons, don't be so prudish. Hey, church, I'm going to defy your rules. I'm not going to be a good little priesthood boy. I'm going to be me publicly. Can we say that's a good thing?
I like when people defy orthodoxy. Courageous is like, I mean, who's to really say on that one? Whether it comes from a place of personal courage.
Well, it'll be courageous if he leaves it up after this episode. that will be courageous, maybe. Okay. All right. So this next slide, Gerardo. What is it?
So this is from the Washington Times article, and they interviewed the other BYU football captain, Connor Pay, who is also a returned missionary.
Okay.
And the article says BYU has not announced any discipline for Batty, whose teammates are more concerned about the video than the speech.
Yeah. And
then there's a quote. Do you want to read it?
This is the center, so the tallest, probably biggest, strongest of all the players on the team. Historically, that can be true. It made me want to run through a wall again at around 11:30 Sunday night when I heard again on my TikTok.
So the day of the Lord, he heard again the speech and he wanted to run through a wall.
On the Sabbath, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Not super appropriate, I don't think, to have an employee of the school you're at take a video of a private team moment like that. But at the end of the day, honestly, we don't care that much, said Senator Connor Bay. So is your point, Gerardo, that if he were a faithful Mormon, he would be disappointed in his teammates' bad language and not mad at the person who recorded it? Is that
Well, you can be both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When he started saying this obviously not super appropriate, I was like, oh, okay, he's gonna say that it was not super appropriate speech. But then no, he's talking only about the guy that recorded it, not about the speech at all. In fact, he's praising this speech. So that was interesting. Can you imagine being a BYU student and going on a national news network and saying, oh, violation against the honor code? Amazing.
Yeah. No. If any student or faculty were to defend any other violation of the honor code, like, I'm glad he had sex with his girlfriend, or like, I'm mad at the student that turned him in for smoking
we are
weed.
heartbroken to learn that one of our teammates.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that is actually really interesting that another student is refusing to care about honor code enforcement.
Mm-hmm. And what about this idea of
Also, because the honor code requires you turn people in.
exactly?
So he should be turning in his teammate according to the honor code,
Yeah.
not decrying the person who turned him in.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. While at BYU, I knew that if one of the, if you were,
You had straight people turning you and Zach in all the time.
yeah, but
right?
if you were known to have information about someone violating the honor code and didn't turn them in, you were equally as liable for that
Yeah.
violation.
Yeah, you
Then
get
you
kicked
were
out.
like a soldier on the battlefield leaving your brother to die,
Yeah.
according to Kimby Clark in
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
video.
So you could be as disciplined just as much as the person who violated the honor code.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And this is interesting, right? Like that he's mad about the private moment, the private team moment being recorded or made public, which is interesting because I guarantee that most honor code violations that are result in discipline come from people who are turned in.
Yeah,
by
so if
others.
somebody were to see his roommate having sex
Yeah.
with his girlfriend
Yeah.
in his apartment, that's a private moment. And if you go tell on him, you're violating a private moment.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't that?
or drinking in your apartment
Yeah.
at BYU.
Yeah.
Isn't that your private place?
So
where
basically, doesn't the rule that you turn in your fellow students for violating the honor code assume that you're going to be violating private moments? Isn't that like
exactly.
a requirement of the rule?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And just to be clear, you can get kicked out of BYU for not turning someone in if you know they did something wrong. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, at least he was when I was there.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've got some clips from KSL. Tell us who KSL is, Gerardo, and why. That's interesting.
So KSL is owned indirectly by the church.
So it's a radio station in Salt Lake City,
Yeah.
owned probably by Bonneville Media or something.
Desert
Desert.
Management.
Okay.
Mhm.
But it's basically a church-owned radio station.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And they have a podcast, which I learned about this.
Called
Couple
KSL
weeks
Sports
ago.
Zone.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have DJ MPK, and I tried to do some research. It seems like they're both members of the church, but definitely the one that talks the most and is gonna defend Batty. He is definitely a member of the church, which I believe is PK.
So there's David James and Patrick Kinahan.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got a few clips. Let's play the first one.
Yeah, my response to it is big deal. I will say, and I've been saying this for years, I think that's why some of these folks who want to tell you that BYU is so different, tone that down. My experience, you're not that different. You're like everybody else. You got a few rules over there. Good for you. But just because you got the rules, all right, they're nice rules, but that doesn't mean everybody's living them. I learned that at Peterson Gym, San Diego, California.
Peterson Gymnasium.
Yeah.
I have to say, I haven't heard that clip. This is the first time I heard it. And I love the fact that a church-owned radio station has a DJ saying, BYU, you're not special, tone down your moral superiority.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Sammy?
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of reckon with it on the spot because I think you're right, but it does all still to me have this energy of patriarchy to it, where it's like because this is like a protected men's sports, and it's a man, if it was a woman athlete at BYU. Screaming like that in the locker room, do you think that she would get away with it? I feel like that would be a much bigger deal. But it's like this sacred, protected thing of like, well, men are allowed to like really unleash their aggression if it's in the name of sports. So it's kind of like these juxtaposing like two patriarchal things that kind of conflict with each other. So one wins because like in that situation, obviously sports brings in a lot of money and like sports are so sacred to people.
But he's saying the rules are dumb and the moral superiority is dumb. let's tone down the rules and the moral superiority.
Yeah, that guy doesn't seem like bishop material to me. Like he's more on the Jack Mormon side of.
And I wonder if
The
he'll get in
Mormon
trouble
universe.
for making that statement.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, only a couple hundred people watch that podcast.
But tens of thousands watch this one.
Exactly.
Or hundreds, depends, or millions. Okay, so let's go. Should we go to the next clip?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next clip.
Jesus came to heal the sick.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay.
And I was sick last week. I go down to Arizona.
And you got sick.
I got sick. I spent Friday the whole day in bed, and it was 78 degrees out. And I literally spent the whole freaking day in bed. Jesus came for me.
What?
We're all human here. If I'm BYU, I don't even acknowledge it.
Okay.
I just let it go.
No.
But to just tone down how different you are. Stop telling me you're so different. Not that they're all doing it. Not that Tom Homo's doing it or any of that other stuff. But there are people out there who want to tell you so much that they're different. No, the basketball team is no longer different. It ain't a bunch of RMs running around shooting baskets and running Hoosiers type offenses here. That's long gone.
I mean, that's fascinating. Sammy, what do you think?
Men are so hysterical.
Why?
Come
Why?
on.
Why?
Just another really hysterical man this episode. I'm like, clearly he struggles to keep the standards because it's like, this is feeling personal for him.
Well, or could it be he's decrying hypocrisy, and isn't that to be applauded?
It sure could be. But it really sounds like he has personal investment.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's remarkable is that he's basically countering the apostles and the prophets, seers, and
well,
revelators.
he's going to bring them up in a second.
Yeah, because Gerardo, we already played those clips
Mhm.
of Holland and Oaks and Nelson, prophets, seers, and revelators saying BYU special, and he's saying all you prophets, seers, and revelators are full of crap. Tone that down,
Mhm.
and that gets you in trouble in Mormonism.
But what did he mean when he was saying I got sick
I don't know.
in Arizona?
I don't know. And Jesus was there. or
Just like
something?
because you got like physically ill with a virus, that's the same as like we're all sinners.
I don't know. I somehow did not follow that.
Mhm.
I didn't really understand that metaphor at all.
He was ranty.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I've never done. Okay. All right. Let's go to the third.
Your rants make sense, though.
Oh, thank you.
We understand them.
Do you hear that, Sammy? My rants make sense.
That is, I would love to hear that one day.
All right. Let's hear the third clip. I love these.
Jesus came to heal the sick.
Wait.
Oh,
wait,
sorry.
was-
Is that the same one?
Oh, is that the same one? Okay.
Was
So
it
I think
the
there's
last
only
one?
3. Yeah. 1, 2.
An assistant coach or a grad
Yeah, but
assistant
that
or
was in a
strength and
public
conditioning
setting.
random.
This
was
isn't in a
not.
public setting.
No, this was
This is
not.
in a locker room. This should have never been recorded. It should have never been released.
Was it?
And I think ASU needs to find out who did that because that's a low blow. That's off limits, man. That's not acceptable. But at the same time, BYU ought to consider it a badge of honor.
Mm.
Because you are thought of as different. If that would have been, I mean, Dillingham there's right there on the field. He's dropping bleep and bleep and bleep right to the referees, right in front of everybody.
He was MFing referees.
Right,
on
he's
a mic.
going nuts.
MFing.
And everybody could see it right there. And that's another story. And here, I've heard stories of, I mean,
Tell
just
us.
one example of a basketball coach lighting up his team, and he doesn't realize it, but in walks a general authority behind, and he can't see, but the guys can see him. And it's like, psst, psst. Hey. Yeah. You're in the moment, man. I mean, come on.
I've used this analogy before on the show. I'm fairly certain. I know a guy who's a former BYU walk-on. They got into a scrap. And we're talking years ago. So this person's well removed from their days at BYU. They got in a scrap. They were a walk-on, and they unleashed a string of profanities, turned around, 3 members of the 70 and 2 members of the Quorum of the 12 standing right behind him. Said he turned around and thought his life was over.
Human sacrifice?
No.
Seems intense.
No, but one of the
I know.
and then one of the 70 looks at him and says, "We get it." That's all that was said.
Guys.
Interesting.
Wow, beautiful.
I mean, okay, that could be viewed as a hypocritical story where the general authorities are being hypocrites, or it could be viewed as like they're being chill and they're cooler than we think, and they're not as uptight.
Yeah, it's like forgive them, Father, for they know not what
Yeah,
they do.
that's
We're all
actually
sinners.
Christian, right? We're all sinners. Which is it? Which is it?
I think the book by Matt Harris kind of reveals how this plays out with general authorities and how they enforce the rules. There are some stories he tells about Black members of the church who had received the priesthood because they passed as white. And then at some points, like general authorities would have to make the decision. So whether they would lose their privileges and lose the priesthood because it was found out that they were Black. And it was so arbitrary how these decisions were made, to the point where like even the prophet, I'm not sure if he was the prophet at the time, Joseph Fielding Smith, would say, no, you're not, you're going to lose the priesthood. But then when he actually got to meet the person, he changed his mind. So I think this guy, I mean, I think this is how a lot of these things sometimes play out with general authorities. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, well, I do like the idea. Like I remember I dated Mary Holland, Jeffrey Holland's daughter, and I'm not mentioning this to name drop, but it was just we were freshmen and I dated her, and
Reese Witherspoon had broken up. Renee Zellweger had broken up with me.
Yeah, exactly. No, but she told me that like her dad watched the Super Bowl on Sunday and that he liked Billy Joel, and like I remember liking hearing that the general authorities are just good, normal humans when they're not in general conference. That is kind of refreshing, right?
I think in this, what just keeps coming into my mind in this specific context we're discussing is it just feels like in Mormonism, which is a patriarchal system, male aggression still has some degree of protection, especially if you're a higher up man who's benefiting the system as a whole. That's what it kind of feels like to me. Because I'm like, the swearing, I mean, obviously don't care if people swear. And I obviously understand that like sports are a high, they're like an intense emotional thing. But it's more kind of the aggression aspect that is disturbing to me. And again, there is no world where if like BYU cheerleaders, you know, like did a string of profanities or, you know, were in the exact same situation and turned around and there's 3 members of the 70, that they would never be like, we get it.
You don't think so?
No, it's like it's the male aggression is protected. There's no way women would get that same protection.
Do you agree, Gerardo? Do you agree with that?
Probably, yeah.
Do you think these sports bros? Well, I'm trying to think like if like let's just say the BYU women's basketball team were caught swearing, would these sports bros say the same thing? Like no big deal, guys swear, women swear, move on, nothing to see here, or would they all of a sudden have moral concern over BYU? I tend to think these sports bros would be cool with the women swearing just like the men.
Well, look at the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, right? These are women who in a lot of cases are like still attending the temple and are still very Mormon, believe in Mormonism. And because they break the modesty standards or, you know, I mean, realistically, it's just that, or, you know, they promote vibrators, that's seen
That's a good point.
as so abhorrent by the average Mormon who's kind of weighing in on the discourse. But according to you, the Mormons in this case are very much like, don't worry about it.
Well, the full force of the church, like, didn't the church release a statement specifically about that show?
Yeah.
So the full force of the church comes down on these 5 women who most of them have temple recommends.
Yeah.
And
like what? Like
they're
one
not
of the
real
ex-Mormons
Mormons.
drank alcohol in a hot tub in one scene, but like
Yeah.
there wasn't actually anything in the Secret Lives that was any more egregious than swearing. I mean, except for the men being abusive.
Right.
You forget the soft swinging, Samantha.
That wasn't in the show.
I know. Well, they talked about it.
It was implied. The soft swinging was in the room.
But it
with
was
them at
talked
all
about
times.
as Hershey's repenting and
It was
going
a
back to
Mormon
church.
hero's journey.
Yeah.
But once you've done soft swinging, it follows you everywhere. There's some things the atonement cannot cover.
Well, that's interesting whether this is kind of a patriarchal past that these players are getting. I think swearing's probably always been a part of BYU football. And I tend to think the brethren would not really care. I wonder if 30 or 40 years ago, if this had happened, if it would have been a bigger deal from church leadership. You know, I don't know. It does seem like the church is getting more laxed, right? Like I hear about bishops letting members smoke cannabis and there's no repercussions. That you drink coffee or be an atheist and you can still go to the temple. Like, I think as the church keeps hemorrhaging members, like most religions in the United States, the brethren are realizing, you hear about adultery now not really leading to excommunication. The only thing that really gets you excommunicated these days are apostasy or like same-sex marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is stuff that, I don't know, present an existential threat to the church, but swearing doesn't, word of wisdom doesn't. So I think the church is getting more laxed, don't you think?
I don't know. It still feels very patriarchal all the way down. I don't think you can escape that.
All right. Okay, Gerardo, what's this next? So this is just KSL.
Yeah, this opinion article by Patrick Kinahan, who we just listened on the podcast, and he's basically just repeating the same things.
And he's basically a church employee, right?
Yeah. But probably we should skip to a slide number 21 if you want, because that's the one where he has the quote by the coach.
Okay, so this is Sitake.
Yes.
Okay, I'm there.
So Kalani Sitake was he's the coach, the BYU football coach. He's a BYU employee, paid by the church, and he has to have a temple recommend, swear that he's going to uphold the honor code, that he is going to uphold the church's teachings of gender and sexual orientation and all that, and swear that he's going to do that. But anyway, he's quoted here in the KSL article when he was asked, okay, what about the recording? What do you think about the recording? And he says, they'll deal with it. I trust the Big 12 leadership and let them handle that. But Sitake was kicked to praise Batty for his contributions to the team, noting he turned down more money to stay with BYU. And this is a direct quote by Kalani. He's all about legacy. He's all about doing what he can do to help this program. So basically, that's okay if he swore. Like, he'll do whatever he needs to do to help the program. This is his home. You can see in the way he plays that he wants this place to succeed.
And you think that's interesting? Why, Gerardo?
That we have a BYU employee on a news network kind of justifying a violation of the honor code, which wouldn't pass for any other kind of behavior. Yeah,
like if a BYU player was caught, football player was caught having sex with a woman, I can't imagine Sitake saying, "Oh, what a great guy! He loves the team. He's really committed." Or if he was gay,
right?
If there was a gay athlete, I can't imagine.
So swearing
Sitake.
is not even swearing's not considered up there with sexual sin.
Except it was listed in that honor code thing right there.
Yeah,
right?
I know. But we all know there's a hierarchy of Mormon sins and sex.
But let's say if he was questioned about, I don't know, why are your BYU football players not abiding by the dress and grooming standards of BYU? He wouldn't make a comment like this, I don't think.
And where are the comments from any church leaders that, if they swore on the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, do you think anyone would be like, it's not a big deal, okay? They were just stressed because they had to get glam for this event and they didn't know what to wear. They would just never apply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's interesting nonetheless. So you got this LDS Living.
Yeah, interesting. So he was featured on the LDS Living an LDS Living article.
But that's not a church-sponsored magazine, right? That's
LDS Living,
is it?
Yeah, it shares an office of Deseret Book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's a church.
Super chat. Yeah.
Okay. Gerardo.
So he tells in that article his story about how he had a spiritual experience and that's why he joined BYU as a coach.
Yeah.
So he's highly regarded. Someone who you would assume. It's just crazy to me because you have so many faculty members at BYU scared of losing their jobs because they support LGBT people, and now BYU is having them have to abide by all these, things where they have to swear that they're going to support the church's policies and doctrines on gender and sexual orientation, and so they're all scared of like displaying pride flags on their offices and that kind of stuff, and have a faculty member like this just going out on a news network justifying violations of the honor code is just,
or praising someone who just got in trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess Samantha, your point is valid. Like, swearing is nowhere near sex in severity for the Mormon Church, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of what we're dealing with here.
Mm.
Yeah. But defying authority is the third rail in Mormonism. And Gerardo, I guess you're saying these KSL employees and even the coach is skating a little bit close to defying church authority.
Yeah.
But they'll ignore it because he's coach of a successful football team. So
Right.
Yeah.
The money.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now you've got, what are these, Twitter?
Yeah. So there's some Twitter comments. These were in regards to the leak of the audio that we can read just a couple. And then,
Okay. All right. To tell us which ones.
let's read this 3.
Okay.
Do you want
So
to start?
Roman Matthew writes, I am LDS and I don't swear and I approve every single words Batty said. What? What? Way to fire up the team and way to show that at BYU or member of the church are human and we exercise our free agency. Well, whether is a bad word or not, and that must be a typo. They showed up second half. Cougars, let's freaking go. So it's a member saying, I don't mind that he swears we're all human.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
can we say that's good, that he's being relaxed and less uptight, or bad that he's a hypocrite?
I can guarantee if this was a post about the honor code reversing its policy on same-sex romantic behavior, this person wouldn't be commenting something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really because sports tap into this other version of tribalism. So it's like you have the tribalism of being in the LDS Church, but then there's the tribalism of your sports team. And in this situation, he wanted to be able to feel good about the fact that his team won. And yeah, so it's like, again, it's like these clashing tribes, even though it's like a tribe within the tribe, you know?
Yeah. All right, Samantha, do you want to read that second? I don't know if you have your...
yeah.
Do you want to read that second?
Yes.
This is a woman named Katie MG 4747. What does she write?
I'm confused. Am I supposed to be shocked or offended or something?
And I'm assuming she's LDS.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. I should have included, but I took originally some screenshots from her Twitter.
You didn't want to dox her? You didn't want to dox her?
I mean, it's public. You can go and see it. But she has quotes by Neil Maxwell and and reposting quotes about women, why they shouldn't go out and work, why women belong in the home, and so it's interesting we care about those things, but this is okay.
Yeah, I'm always torn. I'm like, yeah, Mormons are getting less uptight. That feels good, but then it is not the Mormonism.
Yeah, and like Tom Cruise was getting less uptight when he jumped on that couch.
Yeah,
and was like running the Scientology show.
Yeah. I wish members would speak up and say, I don't care that 2 BYU women were kissing or holding hands, but they wouldn't do that, even though kissing and holding hands is probably not as bad as swearing in the Mormon hierarchy of sin, right?
Well, apparently Katie,
it's worse.
Yeah, let's not even go same sex.
Holding hands is worse than swearing.
Yeah.
With
gay feelings in your heart,
okay.
Holding hands with gay feelings in your heart is better than swearing.
Okay.
What about women working?
Yeah, and a woman outside the home, please, John, grow up.
Okay. All right. Do we read the third, Gerardo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the people who think this is an issue, have never played sports. Maybe
true.
that's why I find why I find it an issue.
Gerardo, you've never played sports.
Yeah. B, if you didn't think this was already happening at BYU, then you live in a fantasy world. This just happened to be recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems true.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
We can skip a few slides. We can go to David Bokovoy.
Oh, okay.
Slide.
Okay. So David Bokovoy, we've had on Mormon Stories. He was a CES director over MIT and Harvard. Came back to Utah, hoped to become BYU faculty. He's an expert on ancient languages, and unfortunately, he lost his faith and wasn't hired at BYU. Not in that order, and eventually he no longer working at BYU. So
yeah,
he's done some great classic Mormon Stories episodes, and he made a comment. He jumped in here. So should we read his comment?
Sure. Do you want to read it?
Yeah. So David writes, David Bokovoy, and this is why so many disdain BYU. They present themselves as morally superior to others, but typically only hold LGBTQ plus standards and faculty to their standards. Athletes often get a pass or a very minimal consequence. That's what you're saying, Samantha, right?
Yeah, we know this is a classic characteristic of high control groups, that the protected elite get to break the rules while everyone else gets, beaten over the head. Sorry, I don't have a metaphor really. Tom Cruise can do whatever he wants, but the average Scientology member might have to, do $6,000 of repentance because they had a bad thought once. It
reminds me of George Orwell's Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, right? Remember that? Yeah, that's a good book.
Great book.
Yeah. Is he British, George Orwell?
I don't know.
Okay. Somebody Google that and let us know. Okay, Gerardo, we've got the Instagram for Honor Code Stories next.
Yeah, so just to drive the point home that these rules are actually enforced, and sometimes arbitrarily enforced, and sometimes enforced upon people who didn't even do anything or actually broke the Honor Code. There was a Instagram account started a few years ago called Honor Code Stories. So people can go there. It has 24,000 followers. Unfortunately, they stopped posting stories a couple years ago, but it's full of these stories of people who were turned in, caught, or disciplined by the Honor Code. Sometimes for not even violating it, but just because people thought they did.
Yeah. And okay.
And then so I put out a survey for people to submit stories for us to maybe read a couple on this episode on their experiences with the Honor Code.
Just to give viewers and listeners, especially those who didn't attend BYU or who have never been Mormon, the sense to which people can be terrorized by the BYU Honor Code. Is that right?
Yeah.
For, really inhumane things.
Yeah.
Which is really what this episode's about. It's about a policy that many of us don't like because it's hypocritical or unfairly enforced, or just not synchronous with developmental, healthy, normative developmental behaviors for humans.
Right.
Is that fair?
Slay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So what do you want to do?
Do you want to start? Do you want to read it?
Okay. So this is one. My roommate and I left our dorm at 2 a.m. to grab some snacks at the gas station down the road. We were gone 15 minutes total. The next day, my RA. So at BYU, there's if you're living in the dorms, you have resident assistants, and there's a curfew, and you're not allowed to be out past curfew. So this person's out past curfew, and so he's saying that the next
other
day,
BYU schools, like BYU Idaho, it's always curfew.
Yeah. The next day, my RA brought me into her office. So this is a woman. Her RA brought her in to the office.
RA was a woman. Sorry.
Brought her into the office and pulled out paperwork, which showed a picture of my car that another student living in the dorms had taken of our car. So some student takes a picture of them out late and turns them in. How are they able to take a picture if they were not late themselves?
It cancels out because you knocked. So you won back your virtue.
Yep.
That's interesting. Okay. So we never met this person. They documented what time our car left and what time we got. I guess they could have taken the picture from their window of their dorm.
Yeah.
Okay. What time we got back. Wow. So they're waiting up. They're there watching them leave, taking a photo of them leaving, and then waiting for them to come back, and then taking a photo when they come back, and then turning that in.
Yeah.
And that's because the Honor Code requires them to do that sort of behavior. Okay. or because they're petty and jealous. I won't say the same swear words that Tyler Batty said, because that wouldn't be good, right?
What are they?
I won't say it. Okay. The RA or honor code, not sure who, traced the license plate to find out that it was registered to my name in the school system. I was told since it was my car, I was the one held responsible, and she asked me extensively what we were doing out that late. I told her we just went to grab some snacks, which was the truth, but she kept asking if we met up with boys, even though she knew we were only gone 15 minutes, and acted like she did not believe me. She told me if it happened again, I'd get in a lot more trouble, all for 15 minutes of us not being in the dorm. We never found out who turned us in, but we knew we had never met her. So why did you choose this one, Gerardo?
Well, this is people going out to grab some snacks.
At the gas
Like,
station.
we're talking about, well, BYU enforces sexual behavior and that kind of stuff. But like,
Yeah,
these stories
that's pretty ridiculous.
show us that
Yeah.
it's not just that.
Yeah, that's
You know?
pretty ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you want to read Tommy, Samantha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tommy. Does this go this way?
Nope.
I'm so
I went to
sorry.
KSL. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to read it?
We're almost there. There we go.
Okay.
As a wildland firefighter, I couldn't pay tithing because I wasn't at church due to being gone literally all summer on fires before they had online tithing. Went into my bishop to say that I hadn't paid due to being on fires and wanted to start. In addition, there were extenuating circumstances at home in which much of my money went to helping my family. He threatened me to back pay $5,000 or I would be kicked out of BYUI. I paid and had literally no money for that year for food or anything. It was absolutely miserable. First time I saw that there was indeed a bishop roulette and the church as a money-hungry institution rather than the Lord's church. Though this wasn't a shelf breaker, it was an easy chip in the foundation of my faith in the LDS Church.
That's just a horrible story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Kicked out of school because you didn't pay your tithing.
Yeah. And like, so what's worse, not paying your tithing or swearing? And Samantha,
Tithing.
you're the official moral
Thank you.
hierarchy
Thank you for saying that.
police.
Tithing is the worst one. And I mean, rookie
So
mistake.
it's consistent. It's consistent.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
very rookie to tell your bishop that extenuating circumstances meant maybe you shouldn't have to pay tithing. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's never going to fly, sadly.
Okay. So not paying tithing is worse than swearing.
But that's not in the honor code.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Well,
that's
it
part of the
is.
ecclesiastical.
Yeah, it's
It's
ecclesiastical.
the
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes endorsement. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we got Lindsay. Do you want to read it, Gerardo?
Yeah. Lindsay, I was an employee for the testing center during those years, and the honor code was what we lived by. If students weren't following the honor code for appearance, we were not allowed to administer them their tests. For instance, I remember several times working the evening shift, 5 to 9, and young man would come in with a 5 o'clock shadow. I never felt comfortable turning them away, but oftentimes would have one of our older women supervisors watching over my shoulder and would make it terribly awkward for me nudging me or whispering in my ear to tell me they had to go back home and shave.
Because at BYU, you can't have a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To not even be allowed the 5 o'clock shadow. What if your
Yeah.
hair does grow back by 5? Is that what that means?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've experienced that
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
This happened many times during the years I worked at the testing center. I also witnessed boy employees having to talk to girls who would come in and their shirts would be too revealing in the chest or showing the stomach.
No, I remember when leggings were kind of super in at BYU Idaho, and people were getting in trouble. Like students would have passed them notes. Those leggings are making me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Or students weren't allowed to go to the testing center at BYU Idaho for
Mhm.
wearing leggings because I guess they engender erotic thoughts. I
Correct.
don't know.
They do.
Okay. So you agree with no leggings, Samantha?
Yeah, I would not have worn leggings to the testing center. That would have been a fail.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, these stories are helping to illustrate how people are terrorized for stupid reasons. So if people are going to be terrorized for stupid reasons, including having their status at the university potentially withdrawn, then that's when the Tyler Batty profanity stuff becomes a problem or hypocritical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's some, we received like over, dozens of stories, and there are some that I didn't include here because they were maybe too long or complicated. There's one, this person was disciplined by the Honor Code and kicked out of BYU. He was an international student, so he had to go back to his country and lose his student visa, but then later came back because he married to his girlfriend at the time. And he came back all the way to his immigration interview for a green card, where the immigration officer is asking him, well, why did you leave the university? Why were you kicked out? And he had to, explain that he was kicked out for violating the Honor Code. Like these things follow you sometimes.
Yeah.
Immigration stuff is serious. Like getting kicked out is serious in that instance.
Yeah.
And always.
Okay. All right. Are we doing Jenna now?
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to read Jenna?
Yeah.
All right. Jenna says, I lived with 3 other roommates off campus. I had a boyfriend at the time who lived in Spanish Fork, and sometimes I would stay late at his house before driving home or stay the night completely. My roommates would chastise me and sat me down one time to tell me they didn't think I should be taking the sacrament anymore because I wasn't living the Honor Code. It then escalated to me coming home one morning to the locks on our front door changed. I had no way to get ready for my day of classes and had to call a locksmith. Well, it sounds like she was having sex with her boyfriend. Is that implied?
I don't know, because I saw a lot of stories saying that they would sleep over and they wouldn't have sex.
Okay.
So I don't.
I've also
think
been
so.
locked out of the dorms at BYUI just for coming home late and wasn't doing anything sinful.
Yeah. But I mean, changing people's locks is inhumane, period, even if they have had sex.
And what about the roommates telling her
Even if they have succumbed.
she shouldn't take the sacrament because she's violating the Honor Code?
Yeah.
Like not having sex, but just violating curfew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's weird.
That's real.
Do you want to read Annie? There's just a couple
Yes.
more.
I worked for the BYU Provo on-campus computer labs from 2006 to 2008, and part of our job was monitoring sites people visited and reporting violations to the Honor Code office.
Wait, okay, stop there, because that
Casual.
was crazy. Like you have BYU employees, like BYU is paying people to monitor students for Honor Code violations.
So if they're on the university supplied computers looking at porn, basically, there are other BYU students being
paid by with tithing dollars,
monitoring student computer
And
activity.
probably not just porn.
Yeah.
To then turn them into the Honor Code if they're looking at porn.
Yeah.
Probably like a queer-friendly blog post could do it,
Or
well, we're gonna read what
or Mormon stories or ex-Mormon Reddit.
Yeah, youtube.com/self on the
Self
shelf.
on the Shelf.
Patreon.com/self on the shelf. It's crazy what could get you. We had software to remotely monitor every computer in the labs, and supervisors could view all the labs. I once turned a man in for viewing tons of Victoria's Secret and other women's lingerie clothing sites late one evening in the Benson building. He could have been married and buying it for his wife, but he was the only one in the lab and seemed to be trying to do this discreetly. Of course, it felt wrong to me because it was clearly sexual. I had to confront him and let him know he was being reported. He didn't refute my assertion, and at the time, I explained it away by assuming he was hoping to get caught because he needed help. Ugh, I really thought I was doing my job and even helping this guy spiritually. I have no idea what he had to go through, but I regret what I did.
What do you think, Sammy?
Hopefully he didn't get sent to Jody Hildebrandt. But that's a real pipeline that did exist,
It is, yeah. Yeah, that thing, telling on other students is so gross.
Yeah, and it really was rampantly encouraged at every level.
The people are getting paid to do that.
Yeah. Ugh, okay.
Sierra. So I think this one, Sammy, you should read it too.
I was engaged in sexual activities with someone I was dating at the time. We never had sex. I told my bishop on a Sunday and was told I would walk into the Honor Code office the next day and self-report. I did as I was told, and it was all downhill from there. In the end, a timeline of my BJs was created in PowerPoint.
Okay, does that mean blowjobs? Is it?
Yes.
So BYU employees made a timeline PowerPoint of the chronology of this woman's blowjobs?
Yeah, just a simple BJ PowerPoint. And broadcast in a conference room in front of myself, my bishop, an Honor Code counselor, and the dean of students. Although I was prompted several times to... We need this PowerPoint. Where is it? Can we find it? I was prompted several times to name the man involved, never did.
This needs to be like a short film submitted to the
Yeah.
Academy Awards of like
Wow.
the BYU blowjob PowerPoint honor code.
I'm really glad
discussion.
we're holding space for
I've
the
heard
blowjob
this. I've heard this
PowerPoint.
before, where like they do a timeline of your honor code violations for you. I've heard this while I was at BYU Idaho, but you should read the other part.
It's like a slide that's like, day one. This was just the tip experience, right? But it still felt worth putting on here. I was on the fence of being kicked out, but instead was put on probation because the PowerPoint slapped so hard. The zoom in effect's really gone. Only because my bishop pleaded for me to not get kicked out. He later said he had no idea this would happen when he told me to self-report, and he vowed to never give anyone the counsel he gave me ever again. I was student teaching in kindergarten at the time and was required to take a service class, which put me at 21 credit hours. I also had to read a talk and meet with the Honor Code counselor weekly to discuss it. A hold was placed on all of my academic records until this was completed.
I just can't imagine adults monitoring other adults' blowjobs and making PowerPoints about it, and then like counseling with them to reduce their sexual behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like once you've done the PowerPoint in the room full of people, like that's your repentance, surely.
Yeah.
But then to have to keep going after that.
Yeah.
That's pretty terrifying and ridiculous
Mhm.
and slightly humorous.
Yes.
If it's not you that it's happening to, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. All right.
All right. So this is the last one.
Okay. And since you went to BYU Idaho, Gerardo,
Sure. Yeah, and trigger warning for this one.
because there's some suicidal behavior that might be triggering something.
Yeah. I had a roommate who struggled with same-sex attraction. So this is a woman, right? She had gone to the bishop about it and was trying to pray it away. She never acted on it, to my knowledge. She became horribly depressed and began slitting her wrists and overdosing on ibuprofen and Tylenol. One of my other roommates and I took away her knives and ibuprofen and Tylenol, but one day she took a major dose of Tylenol in what I believe was a suicide attempt. She refused to let me call 911 or take her to the ER. I didn't know exactly how much she had taken. I was a nursing student at the time and was pretty naive and dumb. I did know that Tylenol wrecks the liver, though, so I had her sleep on the floor next to my bed during the night so I could wake up periodically and check her vitals. She did end up having a stomach ache, but did fine through the night. My roommate, who was extremely volatile, worked late at a fast food restaurant, came home around midnight, and found her on our bedroom floor asleep and threw a fit. She turned us both into the Honor Code office for what I presume was a lesbian activity. I, a 4.0 student who never broke any rules and has severe social anxiety, got called in to plead my case before the dean of students so I could stay in school. I cried and told them exactly what had happened, and the dean, who actually knew my dad, and miraculously believed me. But my honesty threw my lesbian roommate under the bus, and she got shipped back home to what seemed like an abusive and horrible family. She deleted all social media, and I never heard from her again. I think about her often and worry that she finished her suicide attempt. I'm still so angry about this 12 years later. I would have called 911 straight away and got her to the hospital. I should have done things so much better.
Yeah, this can be very serious and dark.
Yeah. But she gets turned in because she has her roommate sleeping on the floor so she can check her vitals, and then she gets called into the Honor Code office for lesbian conduct. Yeah,
that's dark. All right, well, thank you, Gerardo, for pulling this together, and for Julia. Just to summarize, like, I'll play kind of like sort of like host here and just say, is this a win for the church or is it not a win? One argument is it's a win for the church because it helps show that the Mormons aren't as uptight, that Mormons swear like everybody else, that it helps let everyone know what's real. It takes out of obscurity into the light that BYU students swear, The BYU athletes swear. The BYU is pretty much like every other university in a lot of ways. The church is going to not punish this dude probably. And so that's going to let people know all throughout BYU and the church that swearing is probably not that big of a deal. And in the end, this is going to be a good thing for relaxing BYU standards and relaxing Mormon puritanical standards. So I'll put that up as a straw man. Samantha, what's your reaction?
I mean, I think it's a who's to say what's good or bad situation. We can't really know like the net outcome of this. To me, it doesn't feel like that much of a win when it's just like the wealthy, like the protected elite are being given this privilege. Like that isn't groundbreaking, but I see what you're saying, that it is kind of something clearly other members of the church have softened to. So yeah, I don't really know, but yeah, it doesn't feel like any kind of major win. And it's also revealing of, how good Mormonism is at getting people to, be hypocrites. And that's hard because if you can't recognize your own hypocrisy or the hypocrisy in the organization, well, then you're going to like stay psychologically dependent on it. And that's a problem.
Okay. Cool. Gerardo, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say whether it's good or bad, but to me, it was important to highlight the how members of the church can be hypocritical sometimes in defending some kind of behavior, being bigoted and condemning other behavior. Which, if you go into what Jesus taught, I don't think Jesus would use arbitrary rules like that for people who, this person puts BYU and the church in a good light because he's winning football games, so we're gonna go and protect him, but then go and attack people who we think make the church look bad, like the Mormon wives on Hulu, or LGBT people or whatever. But
yeah. I guess the only other thing that I, if I'm trying to be fair and look at this, like anytime you try and teach a standard, a higher standard of living, a higher standard of ethical living, of moral living, whatever, you're going to open yourself up to accusations of being a hypocrite. But I don't think that is a reason. The risk of hypocrisy is a reason for not having standards. I wonder if there's a place for trying to elevate our standards.
Yeah, but I think it's just just having high standards as like a general thing. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of that. Like, not swearing, just like arbitrarily banning certain words, even if someone, says them in the spirit of comedy or a way that there's no harm to anyone for them saying the F word, versus like, I think that right speech is important. I think it's important to be honest as much as possible, which the church isn't. I think it's important to be like compassionate and tolerant and not, there's all these ways you can go with like talking about high standards. And that I don't really see the evidence that the Mormon church has high standards in the sense that like you can actually back them up with sort of like moral, ethical rigor in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Like a standard just in and of itself isn't worth anything. It's like, what's the outcome of that standard existing?
Yeah.
What's the standard in place? Who is it in place for? Who gets to bypass the standard? Like those are all the real questions, not just like it's good to have high standard. Like it's good to have a like strong moral character, but it's just like so arbitrary within the church what that even looks like.
Well, so again, I'm just kind of channeling my Orthodox Mormon self, but like the fact that the church teaches alcohol is bad means there's going to be less alcoholics in Mormonism.
Does it?
I don't know. Maybe.
America has the highest alcohol abstinence rate of any non-Muslim country and has the highest alcoholism rates. Like abstinence doesn't always equal because repression can cause more dysfunction.
The backfire effect, basically. Yeah. I know there's this prescription drug abuse problem, for example, in Mormon culture.
And there's because people are like suffering a lot because they're isolated by American culture and they're in pain. And you can make the case for like in Europe where drinking is more exclusively part of like a social ritual and of like community bonding. That's much more like life enhancing and actually makes them less prone to addiction.
Yeah. Well, certainly the porn prohibitions are backfiring. So we can strike that out. What about,
and
like,
we talked about at the beginning, like the strict prohibition against, or having this high standards and prohibition against swear words make these athletes potentially be more, use swear words even more when they have a loophole than when you compare them to other football players.
What about STIs and teenage, let's say unwed pregnancies? Do we know if they're higher or lower per capita in Utah?
We know that abstinence only sex education, which is what Mormonism and Utah generally teaches, doesn't work and leads to higher pregnancies and STIs.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Natasha's talked about that. All right. So basically, Samantha says no standards. We should have no standards in society, basically.
No,
morality is dead, declares
all
Samantha
I think
Shelley.
about is like what are the actual things that make a person like moral and
Samantha
of sound
hates
character.
morality. She hates virtue. She hates, anything good, basically. All good things.
All she cares about is school and her mom and her friends. And it's disgusting.
I'm kidding. Well, it's interesting. All right. Well, that's all I got. This is awesome. Samantha, thanks for coming like 15 minutes before.
Yeah, thanks
showtime.
for having me. Not to miss my football game for this, but it was worth it. It's a great discussion.
Football? Do you mean British football?
Yes, with the feet.
Do you follow soccer?
No, I'm just joking. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So it was good. No, I was just making sure.
With the feet.
Gerardo, thanks for making this happen.
Yeah, of course.
And Julia, thanks also for your part. And looks like Maven's in the comments now. Thanks to everyone who helped make this episode possible. Do we love BYU or hate BYU? I still kind of love BYU. Am I bad?
You are bad. Yeah, there's something fundamentally wrong and broken about you that can never be fixed.
What does it mean to love BYU? What do you love about BYU?
I don't know. Rise and shout. The Cougars are out.
Kind of the base tribalism of it really speaks to you still, and that's so fine. You have to unshame that. But weren't you rooting for Utah when I saw you before that big game? Yeah.
I love Utah State. I went to an Aggie basketball game last night. Aggies beat Wyoming. I just love any Utah university, basically. Is that bad?
Yeah, that's nice.
Is that okay?
I think that's nice.
Great.
Is that okay, Gerardo?
Especially if if the BYU players are rogue Mormons. That's something to look up to.
Yeah. Tattoos are okay now, right? Like BYU football players have tattoos, and that's not a problem. That's new. Right?
So I bet we'll get gay marriage any day now. Like we are edging it.
That'll be fun.
All right. Well, go Cougars, go Utes, go Aggies, go Wildcats. All the things. Thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories. Check out Zelf on the Shelf. Donate to their Patreon. Keep Tanner and Samantha fed for at least another month, correct?
Yeah, please. 2025 looms.
While you're at it, we really appreciate everyone who donates to Mormon Stories. This is Giving Week, Giving Month. And if you want to also support us, if you value this type of programming and want to see it continue, you can go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. You can also subscribe to this episode, subscribe to the channel, like the channel, share it, comment, and be one of our missionaries to the world. Right? Right, Gerardo?
Yeah.
All right.
And everyone's allowed to say one swear word tonight.
Okay.
Whether you're Mormon or
I'll
not.
say
and you're
damn.
listening.
I'll say damn. What will you say, Samantha?
We'll have to see.
Gerardo?
It will flow through me, I think.
Do you want to say one in Spanish?
Mierda.
All right, Samantha, you're left.
No, I'm not.
She's not doing it
No,
live.
sorry, John. It's in my contract. I can't swear on camera.
You have puritanical Victorian purity standards, basically.
Yeah, I'm still a victim of purity culture.
All right. All right. Thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories. Thanks for a live chat. It's been great to have you guys. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Don't swear. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories podcast. Take care, everybody.